With the title as bold as not your typical reincarnation story, I'm sure you're wondering, Asel, what's the difference between this and other reincarnation stories? Well, there isn't. It is your typical reincarnation story. I'm kidding. I just wanted to make the joke, please. Suna is an unfortunate case where she lived a shitty life and a shitty job just to be killed by a shitty person to be reborn into an even shittier problem. She's reborn into one of the antagonists into a very questionable novel series that anybody on the street would think you were bizarre for reading. Stop obsessing over me, brother. And she's Edith, one of the most despicable, deplorable, arrogant beings in the series. As soon as Suna realizes this, it's at the abuse of her father. A name that could only look like an incorrect word in crossword. Edith is forced into marriage with the Rudwicks for political and monetary reasons. She is being wedded off to Killian Rudwick, brother of Cliff Rudwick and Rice Sinclair. Oh, is that an elephant that is subsequently in the room with us? Well, yes, the title of the novel is Stop Obsessing Over Me, Brother. Well, they aren't all related. Rice was adopted after being abused in her old family. Yes, they grew up together. I agree. It is still weird. When Suna realizes she's in that terrible position, she does what you would expect the character to do, to go against the initial plotline. Because not only is she abused by everyone in the original plotline, she is killed by her husband. In pursuit of changing the history, Suna, who I'll now refer to as Edith, does not know everything at first hand what Edith has done prior, but now she's changing the tune. And as the story goes on, the moments where she tries to really stick it to a character like Killian, for example, it's like, oh yeah, I may be wrong in this situation, but do you remember when you poisoned half the town and like threatened your way into marriage? She has thwarted some moments in the original story successfully. For example, when her and Raiz had to pick a design for that lady, I don't remember her name. Edith knew in the original plot line she ended up picking Raiz out of spite, but she ended up making it a cheerful moment by accepting defeat and just being cool, calm, and in her words, demure. Which was so ironic because I was reading it and I was like, wow, I'm so sick of this word demure. And the universe was like, oh really? Here you go. She even avoids having to buy new dresses initially and just works with the seamstress to change a moment in history, but her forced wed man, Killian, is very suspicious of her and is just very negative about things. And Killian was a very asshole-ish character. I know a lot of people just couldn't stand him, me either, but really sitting back and trying to understand how Edith was before the reincarnation, I think it was very, well, tit for tat. Killian was saving his virginity for Raiz. Yes, it is very weird. I'ma hold y'all hand when I say this. Just because y'all aren't blood related doesn't mean y'all aren't family. Edith's past life traits and skills do carry on to the conflicts in the story. As she's supposed to work, in her past life she worked with finances then and is even doing it now, and even introduces box columns in a time period where it didn't exist yet. And she's earning respect from the people around her. But in the original plotline, Edith writes off information about them, their weapons and information. She didn't do it, but somehow someone matched her box style in writing, but it really leads to what makes the series different. See, the author is still controlling the story and they're actually in it, but Edith tries to change things and it either loosens the authority the narrator has or she's forced into a compromising position. I will say there are a lot of characters that appear in this damn story because sometimes I would look at Rhinon, whoever that is, crazy because it's like, where the hell did you come from? He's supposed to be spying on Edith and just keeping track of her behavior. In the original plotline, he wasn't even important and now he has feelings for Edith. It's like, girl, who are you? The real plot device is that the story is aware of Edith trying to change the plotline, but there's a narrator controlling the story, and at one moment it notifies her that she can't say particular information or they will silence her. So it's not going to be very straightforward and predictable, making the story more interesting from what I thought it was going to turn out to be. She was even told at one point that she had to fulfill 3 requirements, one of them being going against Edith's initial plot that failed her.
Do you know you have 30 minutes? Are you kidding me? 30?
I think all the conflicts make sense most of the time, but I want to stop around the 30s in the episodes and leave things for you guys to read. The first season is complete, and this is where Edith's original family is trying to infiltrate the whatever the family's name is, y'all got it, fill in the blank, and continue the abuse on Edith, even bringing a maid who has literally no personality but just being aggressive and is just going around poisoning everybody, trying to pin it on Edith or Raiz. And that's where it's like, I'm very super suspicious of you if that maid's the actual narrator, because who just outwardly says something about the narrator and nobody just acknowledges it. Nobody just completely acknowledges it at all. Either that or I'm just horrible at reading. On the contrary, we have series like I'm the Villain, My In-Laws Are Obsessed With Me, hell, even Marry My Husband, and like countless others, where yes, some are reincarnated into a villainous character, but what really deters this series and adds something different is the narrator really being there in the story as another character, whilst them and the antagonist fight against the system. Seemingly, they had more variations of Edith, because did you notice how in the beginning it said V13? What happened to V12? What happened to V8? Isn't that a drink? It's a constant tug-of-war where the system knows Edith is actively trying to change things and also can silence her if she says too much. But there's battle of power where the narrator is losing strength. But it seems Suna is slowly enjoying being a bit of an antagonist, so the pure heroine to villain plotline that you've seen a lot is kind of twisted a bit. Killian as a character was the first one I saw a lot of complaints about. Some people felt like his shift towards liking Edith was a bit sudden and fast, but I think there was a lot of moments where he really thought to himself, wow, she's different. I think it was fairly paced. He sees more admirable traits in Edith, but didn't want to let his guard down. I think he could have calmed down a little bit, because even Raiz was like, whoa, slow down, but it was better to see him differently instead of like a Rob from Love Island where it's like, wow, he's shitty, but he's so hot, so you have to like him. I'm just glad I don't have to see him in some kind of like weird teetering love triangle. I'm glad they showed more of his perspective throughout, because yes, we're in this like fourth wall breaking POV of Suna. He had the nicest development I've seen as I've read this story. Raiz, as far as I've gotten, kind of surprised me because with how they delivered her towards the beginning, with the laughter after Edith's remark, but she really played the backseat and was just innocent and stayed out the way. I wouldn't say her character was disappointing, but I'm gonna say she's a little disappointing. An initial protagonist, she sure was just antagonist. She's kind of just like there. We don't really get much of her perspective versus like Killian, for example. I don't like that love triangle though, like I'm saying. Cliff is kind of just there too, like he kind of just exists in the context of which he came from, but he just doesn't do it enough for me. I just think it's weird seeing him knowing he's supposed to be destined for Raiz. Ew. He's still like an asshole of a character towards Edith, but he hasn't like really changed. He's just stagnant. Like he didn't leave an impression on me and he just seems like, well, a rock. Suna, I like her. I think it was very entertaining to watch her slowly realize maybe being the antagonist is kind of fun, but still trying to figure out how to be morally right. I think how Suna was treated in her reincarnated life and how she reacted to some of the bad things happening made sense. Some people were probably expecting like a whole badass, like fight back at everything, but she was a very quiet sufferer. Like it made sense because of her past life. And I guess I haven't seen much development from her, but hey, final thoughts. Not Your Typical Reincarnation Story was a story that I felt a little overwhelmed by at first, maybe because it was an aristocratic setting, so I had a bit of trouble following and there was just so many characters thrown at me. Like, hey, here's person one, before we can tell you anything about them, here's like 5 more people. But before you can have any understanding, be prepared for like 3 more in one chapter. But I felt like as soon as they got the ball rolling with a little chaos, I was looking forward to more petty drama. It's like a constant, how many walls can we break? I don't think it's too far off from others. What do you guys think? What do I say?